Title: Stories They Don't Teach in Schools, Episode 5. Subtitle: The Tuskegee Experiment, When Science Betrayed Humanity. They said it was for research. They said it was to help. But behind the calm voice of medicine and the white coats of authority was one of the darkest betrayals in American history. A betrayal not hidden in the shadows, but carried out openly, with government funding, medical supervision, and silence from those who knew better. A betrayal that lasted 40 years. This is the story of the Tuskegee experiment. It began in 1932 in the deep rural South, Macon County, Alabama. The Great Depression had left many poor, and for Black men working as sharecroppers, life was already a daily battle. They trusted little because they had little. So when doctors from the U.S. Public Health Service arrived promising free health care, free meals, and burial insurance, it felt like a blessing. They were told they were being treated for bad blood, a vague term used to describe everything from fatigue to anemia. They didn't know that what they really had was syphilis. And worse, the doctors had no intention of curing them. These men weren't patients. They were subjects. The government wanted to study the effects of untreated syphilis in the human body. So instead of treating the disease, they watched it destroy them, year after year, decade after decade. They let the men believe they were being healed. They gave them fake treatments, placebos, vitamins, even painful spinal taps, and called it therapy. All while taking their blood, recording their symptoms, and documenting their deaths. As the years passed, the disease spread. Wives were infected. Children were born sick. Generations suffered for a lie disguised as medicine. Then came the 1940s, and with it, the discovery of penicillin, a cure for syphilis. By then, it could have saved every man in the study. It could have stopped the pain, ended the deaths, and healed families. But they didn't give it to them. Not one dose. Because to the researchers, these men weren't human lives. They were data points. Numbers on a clipboard. Even doctors outside the study, physicians who unknowingly treated these men, were instructed not to cure them. The government ensured the lie continued. For 40 years, the experiment went on, 1932 to 1972. 40 years of death, deceit, and deliberate silence. By the time the truth came out, more than 600 Black men had been used. Over 100 had died directly from the disease. Countless wives were infected, and children were born with congenital syphilis, carrying the weight of a horror they never asked for. It wasn't science. It was cruelty with a government seal. The truth finally surfaced when a whistleblower, Peter Buxton, a young public health service employee, leaked the information to the press in 1972. The world was horrified. The front page headline read, "Syphilis victims in U.S. study went untreated for 40 years." Congress launched an investigation. The program was shut down. And for the first time, the men of Tuskegee were seen, not as subjects, but as victims of a government's indifference to their humanity. In 1997, 65 years after the experiment began, President Bill Clinton formally apologized to the survivors and their families. Standing before them, he said, "The United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly morally wrong. To our African American citizens, I am sorry." But no apology could bring back the dead. No speech could erase 40 years of pain. For many in the Black community, the damage went beyond the physical. It broke trust. It built fear of hospitals, of doctors, of anything claiming to help. That mistrust echoes even today. In clinics, in conversations, in generations taught that medicine can harm as much as it heals. The Tuskegee experiment wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A choice made by scientists, doctors, and leaders who saw Black lives as expendable. A choice defended, ignored, and hidden for 4 decades. And when we talk about racism in America, we often talk about chains, about laws, about violence. But this was different. This was racism in a lab coat. Racism disguised as research. A weapon hidden behind the language of progress. This is Episode 5 of Stories They Don't Teach in Schools. A story that forces us to ask, how many other truths were buried under the weight of silence? How many lives were lost, not to disease but to deception? The men of Tuskegee didn't just die of syphilis. They died of betrayal. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, if you believe the truth should never be buried, subscribe, follow, and stay with us as we uncover the stories they don't teach in schools.